Welcome to Working for Women, the Independent Women's Forum podcast, where we are changing the conversation about women and public policy for the better.
Hey everyone, I'm Julie Gunlock, a program director at the Independent Women's Forum and your host for today's Working for Women podcast. Today we're keeping it in-house. We have two people also with the Independent Women's Forum, Carrie Lucas, who's the executive director of the Independent Women's Forum, and Amber Schwartz, who's the executive vice president of IWF. And today we're going to talk about parenting and summer and the juggling it takes, but we're also going to talk a little bit about sort of the lost art of boredom, how it's a trend now to constantly entertain kids during the summer. Parents feel a great deal of pressure to entertain their kids, whether it's signing them up for stacked camps or taking them on constant vacations and constant road trips. We're going to compare our own childhoods, which were filled with boredom, to the pressures we feel as parents today. So thanks, Amber and Carrie, for joining me. I know as moms, you probably have a lot to say on this matter.
Yeah, thanks so much,
Thank
Julie.
you.
You're absolutely right. It is funny how I think that it's not only there's pressure that comes from other parents, where I feel like sometimes you're talking to friends. They have all these, so enriching camps that they've planned or activities they planned for their kids, and you feel kind of bad saying like, well, we're going to be hanging around the house and playing some board games, and they better remember how to do a good old pretend on their own. So you do get it, and then obviously the kids' expectations. I think, particularly with the kind of video age, when there's all sorts of technology and this, the kind of idea that they hear from other kids about all the cool stuff that everybody else is doing, kids' expectations, I think, can be a little out of whack. So it puts a lot of pressure on parents. And I do think the parents need to, kind of join together and say, enough is enough.
Yeah. I recently wrote a piece for Culturated. It's coming out this week, but it's on the Holderness family. And I don't know if you two do you guys know the Holderness family? Do you know who they are?
Only from talking to you, but yes, Julie, I want to give us the Amber's in the mix.
Okay, mm-hmm. Amber, do you know the Holderness family?
No, I don't.
Okay, they're I'm shocked that you guys don't know who this is. They are so funny, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners know who they are. So the Holderness family are sort of this internet sensation. They are a family of four. They're kind of like the perfect family. They're, this sort of petite, adorable mom and the handsome but goofy dad, and then two kids, a boy and a girl, who are so willing to go along with their parents' embarrassing videos. And what they do is they sort of make fun of, a middle-class family and sort of and being parents, and they're very good-natured about things. And they recently, and honestly, I always think they're on point. I think they're very funny. And they just, make fun of sort of, competitiveness and helicopter parenting and all that. So I love their videos. But their latest video was, and they do songs. It's like music videos. And their latest was sort of like, hey, parents, huddle up. Let's, it's summertime. It's time, and we can do this if we work as a team. And then it goes through like, let's do a play date at 3:00. Let's do a jigsaw puzzle. But in every thing, or like every scene, they are hovering over the kids, and it's clear that they are in charge of their children's entertainment. Now look, I'm not trying to make it too serious here, but it was interesting that clearly the message is, parents, it's your job to make your kids happy. I don't feel that that's my job, and I feel like that's a kind of tough trend to go down. The interesting thing is, I think we're on the East Coast, and, when Carrie talks about the pressures and like sort of the camps and the expensive camps and the enriching camps, I think that's sort of in some ways very much like a big city East Coast thing. But I think the Holderness family is popular among sort of more average families and families in the Midwest, and they have a huge following. So I don't want to see that trend take hold. I think that's something that we sort of, it's hard where we are to fight against that. Do you guys feel that pressure? Amber, do you feel that pressure to like constantly sign your kids up for camps? And let's not forget those camps are pretty expensive.
Yeah, sometimes I do, but I kind of keep things in perspective, and let me give the listeners a little tip out here in Virginia. Vacation Bible schools are it, because they are generally free, and you have like 9 to 12:30. And I do that mostly for work, though. But, and my kids enjoy it, but I honestly have a lot of... Ours are free or $25 or less. Yes, I mean, $25 to me is basically free. So, Yeah. Drive out to the country.
You're not in the country.
I generally do that, but then I think I'm pretty good at giving them their free time. In fact, right now I've locked myself in the laundry room while they're upstairs occupied, keeping themselves busy until the babysitter gets here. So I try to keep things real. We have land, so they've got room to play and whatever else. But certainly I'm constantly pressured by people about what they're doing.
Yeah, one thing we've really tried to do is talk to our kids about. We joke about it and say that if the kids start bothering us too much about like what are we going to do, we joke that they must need board training. And this is like you have to we need to make sure that we have no TV or no technology around because they need to learn to figure out what to do with their board because it's not mom and dad's job. So we kind of use it almost as a threat. Like you complain to us. Well, then I'm going to find something for you to do, and it's called chores. It's called, you need something to do, then here, go clean your closet. Because otherwise, I do think that there is this idea that kids need to remember they're in charge of their entertainment. And just yesterday it was funny because I feel like my kids had started to complain, and I shoved them off, and said, you guys figure something out. I've got 5 kids. This means they have a built-in play dates with each other.
Exactly.
And they're coming up with a great pretend. And all of a sudden, it was even my kind of older kids were all of a sudden a part of this imaginary world. It didn't last forever. It ended in kind of a, there's always it can kind of devolve that somebody gets hurt feelings. And you the magic can only last so long. But I think that's a really important skill. And it's one that parents need to remember that their kids have in them, and that's important to develop as much as any, getting through boredom, I think is just as important as any skill they're going to learn in some souped up equestrian camp or whatever.
Creativity. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Your imagination is more important than riding a horse.
I also use that sort of. I don't want to say it's a threat, but it kind of is. We have a playroom that is. I have actually injured myself walking in the playroom. I've done multiple Lego insertions into my foot. I've fallen. I've tripped. It's a total hazard, and I do try to straighten it up, but I have, on a tip of an older mom, they now know if they come to me and say I'm bored, that they get, for every time they say they're bored, they get 15 minutes of cleaning up the playroom and straightening up play. And it's amazing how suddenly, like you say, creating their own, their own play situations, playing with each other, getting on their bikes has become a lot more attractive. So we had that sort of pain, that growing pain, the first week of summer break, but they seem to understand now that there are consequences for saying you're bored to mom because there's plenty of things to do. I also have kids that are a little older, older than your youngest, Carrie, and certainly older than yours, Amber, and they are able to, I want them to explore. I fancy myself as a free ranger, and I want them to explore. But I think let's talk a little bit, I want to change gears just for a second and talk about how isn't this also part of the bigger trend of the constant rewarding children and recognizing children's accomplishments as accomplishments when they're really not. Carrie, I know you recently wrote a piece. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the piece you wrote in Acculturated about sort of the sort of overpraising of children.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because as I do think schools are kind of complicit in kind of this kind of hyperactivity or this, and then this idea with both overscheduling, but then also this over celebrating. I found it just amazing that I have a 6th grader so she finished up elementary school this year, and that seemed like an absolutely fine. Let's really that's the end of a year for some kids. They've been in this school for 7 years since kindergarten. It's definitely worth kind of having some kind of moment to acknowledge that and to tell them congratulations and good luck in middle school. But man, it wasn't just one promotion ceremony. It was literally a week of activities, and these activities weren't just kid get-togethers. There was pizza and cupcakes, and these parents, we had to decorate. My goodness, they had a swim party, they had a dance thing. It was honestly, it was way more involved than I remember from my high school graduation.
Right.
And and then it wasn't then in addition, not only that, I've got a 2nd grader and a 4th grader. They each had at least one class party to celebrate the end of their year, and then with all the activities, it just got to be way too much. And I really thought, of course, again, 6th grade graduation or promotion ceremony, fair enough, that makes some sense. But really, like, how are we going to tap it in high school? Like, what are they going to do? Because we've already had this, like, all this stuff.
And Amber, didn't your preschooler have a big graduation ceremony? So preschool, right?
Yeah,
like,
you guys are going to be
a butterfly all day. Like, why?
Yeah,
like,
you're gonna be.
Tough.
Yeah, you're gonna be so disappointed in me because my son is 4 and he has a September 28th birthday, so I am putting him in preschool again next year.
Yeah.
So I actually had him do his huge graduation, and then at the end I realized, oh wait, perhaps I should have left him out.
That's
because
hilarious.
He's going back. Yeah, so I got sucked right into all of it, but it was cute, but yeah, it was crazy. Just recently
Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say just recently my nephew graduated from high school, which ended up being at a big university at George Mason because he has such a big class and with all the families and everything. And it was a really nice ceremony, but I have to admit, like, not quite as exciting as Luke's. It was, like, very calm and no one sang a song.
Which also does seem like an actual accomplishment. Like, you're done with both elementary school, middle school, high school. Like, it seems like, could we hold off the celebrations until, like, you've actually accomplished something, and that is your primary education is over, you're going off to college. Seems like an appropriate reason to, but it is,
Absolutely.
it's sort of like the celebration fatigue. By the time we get to high school, we're going to be like, kid, I'm so annoyed. Like, I've been to a million of these things. Like, here's your check for $20. Go away.
Well, I totally agree. It's funny because so my Maggie, my 5-year-old daughter, did have her preschool graduation, and it was like the cutest thing you could imagine, with a bunch of little kids running around and cap and gowns and singing cute songs. But I was thinking, like, what on earth? Like, there is, like, if these kids are running around in cap and gowns, like, at 4 because they sat through coloring. It's just it really is. I do think that there's a kind of, like, it kind of insults the and I think in particular when we've, this is a separate conversation. We've all talked before about the problem of not letting enough kids, like, high school is supposed to be a big deal. We want high school. Not everybody does go on to college. A lot of people don't, and we want high school to be an accomplishment. It's supposed to be a serious thing, and we should acknowledge that. But if my 5-year-old is being celebrated and wearing a cap and gown, it seems like a weird thing.
It's a weird cultural trend. And I will tell you, Carrie, you mentioned one thing earlier. You said something about, like, schools are sort of promoting this whole trend. And it's true. It's interesting. In my school, and I think in a lot of schools across the nation, there's something within the school called the Talented and Gifted program, right? Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about talented and gifted programs, right, is that parents can actually insist they're not so talented and not so gifted kids go into these programs. Okay, so you might have now. I mean, and this is interesting. I talked to a teacher who has taught for 30 years. I talked to her about this program, and she said in her 30-year career, she has seen 2 actually talented and actually gifted children run through that program. And so it's interesting, too, that even academically within these schools, there are programs designed to sort of also, like, sort of pad the egos of the parents and sort of set kids into these special categories. And look, I see nothing wrong with these programs that give kids sort of a little bit more of an academic push and maybe give them a little bit more work. I think that's fine. But it is kind of interesting how this all feeds on itself. And when you think about where these kids will be at the end, Amber, you mentioned your nephew just graduating. You think of, like, all the things they've been fed, all the celebrations, all the congratulations. I live in Alexandria City. The big high school is T.C. Williams. At the end of high school, I'm not kidding you, the PTA has to raise thousands, I can't remember exactly, but I believe it's like tens of thousands of dollars to throw a party at the end of the year at this rec center. I heard a little bit of the planning and the amount of money that they have to raise to have this party for these kids. And they call it like a alcohol-free party for the kids. And I'm like, they're actually having to sort of, it's already against the law, kids, to drink, right? Like, you shouldn't be drinking anyway. And then, like, they have to have this special party for these kids. That is, it's amazing, the kinds of vendors and things that they provide. So it's just kind of interesting to me as we launch these kids into college, we have celebrated these kind of, I'm sorry, but finishing high school really isn't that big of a deal. Like, it shouldn't be thought of as world's greatest accomplishment, and yet kids are really being rewarded as if, as
Well,
if they
you know,
just
I also-
graduated
but
from
I-
Oxford.
Well, but I don't know. I think I don't want to say. I think that high school graduation should be a big deal, but I don't think that means you shouldn't have to. We don't need to be spending $10,000 on creating like a
Yeah, that's
a
the
whole
only point I'm making.
souped up celebration. Yeah, a celebration ceremony. Yeah, I wish we could move away from the, again, that not everything has to have like 6 different parties. It should be a serious event, and we should treat it as such. But man, yeah, it's just we've all gone a little bit overboard, and I do think that's not helping our kids. Because you know what? When you get your first job in the real world, nobody's going to be celebrating you like that. You got to get used to doing a lot of thankless tasks and hoping for a smile and a pat on the back. But that's that's about it.
On a good day,
all of these trophies.
I think you guys, I think this all comes down, like as we're sitting here talking, I think this all comes down, and Julie talks about it often, to like helicopter parenting. And I think a lot of these schools are doing this stuff to please the crazy parents that expect things at age 3 or whatever it is. So my word of advice for everyone listening is let your kids play in the sand and let them paint in the driveway and let them be creative and unscheduled time and lay off.
Lay off. I agree. I would also just conclude this by saying I think it's kind of interesting that you see fewer family-based celebrations. I know that people don't have as big of families these days. Their families live further away. But it's interesting to me that I think to some degree some of these school-based celebrations have replaced a little bit of maybe church celebrations, and family celebrations and close friends. That's a little sad too. I see that as a sort of a change, because I do remember for my own high school graduation, I shook the principal's hand, I got my diploma, and then we went out and we were with our families. There were really no parties. I mean, the school was like, we did enough, okay? We had you for 8 years. You're done. So I do see that as yet another area where sort of schools are taking over. I've written about this, from school lunches to daycare to even medical care. Schools are now these social center hubs, and I see this as another extension where they are taking on the role as as the celebrator of accomplishment. Yep. So anyway, well, listen, I think we've covered everything. I think we've been sufficiently curmudgeonly and about celebrations. And I appreciate you guys joining me. Get back to entertaining your kids.
Thank you.
Julie.
All right, well, this has been another episode of Working for Women podcast. Check us out at IWF.org. We cover a lot of issues besides parenting. They're healthcare, labor, taxation, a whole bunch of economic issues. Again, IWF.org. Thanks for tuning in.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, or stop by IWF.org for similar content.